Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Plane Talking UK podcast. It's episode 490. I'm Nev, and it's great to see everybody again this week. Got a few changes of personnel this week as well. We'll talk about that shortly. But in this week's show, we take a look at some of the footage that we shot at the RAF Cosford air show last week with Carlos. And here's another question for you. How many passenger 747s are still flying? We're talking about that a bit later on in the show. And Ryanair bans Brits from taking duty-free booze on popular flights. In the military, we talk tilt rotors. The RAF retires its C-130s and a massive exercise kicks off in Europe. Joining me this week are our good friend Matt in the PTUK studio, or the PTUK studio oven, I think. Should really be saying.
Yes, we? Absolutely. Very much an oven here. We are enjoying something that we're not very used to here in the UK, and that's decent weather. So we're making full use of it, as I say. And the studio is currently, the PTUK oven. I'm cooking I'm baking some cookies while I'm here.
Nice. Yeah,
absolutely.
Some of my work colleagues are over in Orlando at the moment for the the big event, the Infocom show over there. And of course, Orlando this time of year is extremely hot and sweaty and just a bit horrible.
Dear.
So we haven't got Carlos this week, due to, what should we say, operational difficulties.
Indeed. We do have a little message from him. Shall we share that with everyone?
Let's do that. Yeah.
Indeed, let's.
Hello, PTUK awesome viewers. Sorry I can't be with you guys on the show tonight. I am trucking, as I always seem to be doing these days. So yeah, I can't be with you on the show tonight. But have a great show, and I know you've got some great stories lined up. So enjoy yourselves, and hello to all the chat room. Look after the boys, and I'll see you in a few weeks' time when I'm back. Take care, everyone.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Carlos. So he's busy trucking on the road, as you can probably see. It's done and dusted. Yes, apologies. I forgot to send the audio back to you, Nev. But basically, he's sending in his apologies.
Well, so what do we do when Carlos isn't on the show? Who could we find that could help us with aviation knowledge? Well, clearly we've had to scrape the bottom of the barrel again.
Wow, okay. There's no way to talk about Nick. That's a bit rude. So,
however, this fine gentleman has agreed at very short notice to join us on the show once again, and it's Captain Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Do I have to do this?
No, you absolutely don't. Please, you've literally just finished work. Bless you. So thank you for joining us.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy to be here with my good friends and you guys too.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, cheers for that. Appreciate that. It's so you've literally just finished work, Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a quick flight from Atlanta to Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains, and back. And so just a half day's work. It was nice and easy.
Makes a change, eh?
And nice weather. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I must admit, lots of chats that we've been having with Armando this week, and he's been basically dodging what I can only describe as horrendous storms and stuff, sort of in the sort of Charlotte area. Yeah, just it's you do weather very well there, don't you? You're very good at weather.
You have to be. You really do. And this season's weather is a little bit different than most because of the, is it the El Nino or El Nina? I don't know. I can't tell or it's either the El Nino or the other one. But warm water temperatures over the Pacific are changing the patterns of the jet stream. And it's just highly unusual to have this kind of weather in June, really.
Wow. Indeed.
And we're also joined by our very good friend and colleague that joined us up at RAF Cosford last week for the air show, which was extremely warm, I have to say. It's Nick Codling. Hello, Nick.
Hi there, Nev. How are you doing? It's
Yeah, fine,
good
thanks.
to be back on, and safely returned from a fantastic day at Cosford, and the sunburn is just about recovered now. So,
Yes, I must say, Nev, you're looking particularly radiant this evening. I think.
Yes, unfortunately, makeup hasn't arrived yet.
Right,
Glowing.
glowing is the word. Absolutely.
To wait for them.
Now, Nick, I know you had a great time, obviously, at Cosford, but it wasn't exactly the most straightforward journey home for you. It turned out in the end.
sadly, it wasn't. No, I mean my trusty Mercedes, which I do love, and I've had for 9 years now. It's never ever let me down, and unfortunately, on about halfway home, my alternator decided that it didn't want to work anymore. So, yes, I ended up having a little trip to Gloucester Services, and through a sort of failure of one of our UK recovery services, I ended up leaving the car there and going home by train.
As you do.
And finally got home just after midnight on Sunday. So yeah, it was
and did the trains behave themselves as well?
Mostly. One of them was a little bit late, but I did get to where I needed to go, which was home, finally. So
Okay.
yeah, it was a bit of a long day.
Lovely,
But,
well done.
It was a great show though, and it was kind of worth the upheaval because we saw some absolutely spectacular flying. So yeah, it was
Indeed,
a great
yes.
day out.
And we've got a little bit of a teaser, I think, Nev, of what's to look forward to coming up later.
Yes, we have, yeah. So before we do the commercial, let's have a look at who's in the chat room tonight. Oscar is in there, Captain Cruz, Mazuz is in there as well, Liz Piper. Don't know if you've heard of her before, Jeff.
That name rings a bell.
She's making sure.
Liz, I thought you were in my ear.
Well, yeah, but I think she's just making sure she gets her 10%.
Well, of course, absolutely.
Or whatever the fee is these days.
Yeah. Wait, there's a fee? What?
Yeah. Bill's in there.
Percent?
Lee Davis, Hobby Time, Alan White, Jenny Parkinson's even there as well. Captain Ridiculous Wits is in there as well. John Falk's there. And Dirk S also. So thank you very much to everyone for joining. Really appreciate your contributions. And of course, this week we've got the results of our competition for the book, which is a Concorde book written by Mike Bannister, Chief Concorde Pilot. We'll be giving that away later on. And then we were setting a new competition question as well. So I've got another book to give away later. So if everybody's ready to go, let's do the commercial.
Let's go.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
Well, the first story is on the aviation24.be website, and clearly Liz Piper has got a calculator out again because it says that Russian Antonov 124 cargo plane has been seized by the Canadian government at Toronto Pearson Airport. The government has seized this Russian cargo aircraft at Pearson, and the plane has been grounded at the airport since February 2022 and is believed to be owned by a subsidiary of Volga Dnipro Airlines LLC and Volga Dnipro Group. Canada recently imposed sanctions against these entities due to their involvement in the war against Ukraine. The seizure of the plane is part of Canada's plan to pressure Russia to end its aggression by targeting its economy and limiting access to resources that support the war. This is the first physical asset seized by Canada under this regime, and the second seizure under the Special Economic Measures Act. If the aircraft is forfeited to the Crown, Canada intends to work with the Ukrainian government to redistribute it for compensation, human rights support, international peace and security, or the rebuilding of Ukraine. Canadian officials have stated that the seizure sends a clear message to Russia about the consequences of its actions, and that Canada stands with Ukraine in its fight for freedom. Gosh. Well, that's some asset to seize, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's an Antonov, isn't it? At the end of the day, so it's a big old plane.
It's been on the deck since February of last year. That means it's been nearly 18 months that it's been stationary. So in terms of operational capability, they'll need to do a bit of work on it to get it airborne, or scrap it for parts. From what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, it's obviously it's a bold move, obviously, to do such things. I mean, I assume. I don't know. I'm sort of trying to sort of think, as you say, sort of February last year. I mean, we were very much, it was all very much happening then. It seems like an unusual decision, if you like, to test the waters. I don't know if this was a test case or an experiment, maybe, to see what sort of reaction they were going to receive.
Well, what is it they say, that possession is 9/10 of the law, and
Yes, okay.
I think they've ticked that box. That's for certain.
Indeed.
So,
I mean, they're amazing planes, these Antonovs, aren't they? I mean, obviously it was devastating, that big one that was essentially turned into kindling, wasn't it, by the fire in the hangar there, the biggest one, I mean. Well, I'm sure somebody somewhere knows what they're doing. Indeed.
Well, this is not. This happens reasonably regularly, doesn't it? As well, when there's arguments about funds that have not been paid for at airports and this sort of thing, and in the worst case scenario, then they can seize an aircraft. But obviously, this is a slightly different circumstance.
Yeah, indeed. It's whilst personally, as I say, speaking personally, it's a move I sort of agree with, obviously, because of what's going on, and that I've got sort of friends who are caught up in it, so very sort of conscious of doing whatever you can to try and do it. But is this realistically going to have any impact on bringing it to a close? Probably not. But
Jeff, you got any opinion about this at all?
Do I?
You can say no, by the way, if you'd rather not.
Well, no, I really don't.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. As I say, it's like you're sort of, sort of happy to watch this one from afar, I think, really, and just sort of see how it plays out from my perspective. There's arguments both sides of the water, aren't there, I guess. I absolutely don't agree with what's going on. Yes, it probably shouldn't have been given clearance to land unless there was an emergency. If you see what I mean, I don't know. It's a funny old one, isn't it?
Now, obviously, story 2 is always or nearly always a Ryanair story, and no exception this time, because we've got some alcohol problems with those naughty Brits again.
I mean, I'm sort of a quarter of the way through my bottle of wine. I mean, I think that's a bit strong, Nev, if I'm honest. But taking a look at the Sun for this one, which is obviously where we go for all of our aviation stories. Bottle it. Ryanair bans Brits from taking duty-free booze on popular flights. Reading the story, passengers travelling from the UK to Ibiza must have their duty-free bags tagged and put in the hold. Anyone who is caught trying to sneak it into the cabin could be kicked off the flight with no refunds, Mixmag has reported. An email sent to passengers says any alcohol purchased in airport shops or elsewhere must be packed carefully in a suitable item of cabin baggage, which will be tagged at the gate and then placed in the aircraft hold free of charge. So anyone who opts for a bottle of wine or vodka while shopping at the airport will have to check it in and collect it after the flight lands. Sun Online Travel has contacted Ryanair for comment. It isn't clear if any other routes are effective other than the UK to Ibiza route. Last year, holidaymakers were left terrified as dozens of rowdy passengers partied in the aisles of a Ryanair plane which was travelling from Edinburgh to Ibiza. A couple told of their horrible ordeal as the drunken travellers downed booze, I should say, from duty-free while shouting and dancing during the 3-hour flight to the Balearic Party Island. The chaotic footage showed passengers drinking from a bottle of Grey Goose vodka, while another held a large portable speaker overhead as they blasted dance tunes and parties in the aisles. The story goes on. I won't go into that. I mean, I don't...
Sounds like my kind of people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Party central. I don't know. I don't understand. I think people have been buying it and then drinking it on the plane, haven't they? I think this is clearly what the problem is. But I mean, we know from stories that, and Jeff, I dare say, with your illustrious career, I'm sure you've had many a negative experience as a result of, shall we say, a passenger not knowing their limits in terms of being on an aircraft.
Honestly, I have been very blessed when it comes to not encountering any of those kind of events on any of my flights through my almost 35-year career. But I do hear, but I don't have a lot of Brits traveling.
No, true.
Flights,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
right.
probably why.
That's probably why we do like a beer or 12, don't we? Nev, sorry, you were saying.
I'll just say perhaps British passengers don't travel on Jeff's aircraft.
Exactly.
Well,
we're thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, indeed. I mean, the thing is like, I suppose if I was buying duty free, it would usually be let's use this as an example. So it would be me, if I was doing it, I would be buying duty free with a view to bringing it home and drinking it rather than going the other way, if you see what I mean. So, I can absolutely see why. And again, it's the same, isn't it? It's like the minority spoiling it for the majority, as per usual, in the fact that there were probably a handful of people who were sort of doing it and it'd been absolutely fine. And you got people who are taking the mickey, aren't they? Where they're buying a whole bottle of vodka, sharing it amongst the, just buying tonics on board and all that kind of thing, and just sort of ruining it for the majority, as per usual. So I'm actually with Ryanair on this one. I think it's a very sensible idea, although I don't know how it would fit, given Swissport and Ryanair baggage handling their reputation. I'm not quite sure how well they would survive being hulled around on conveyor belts and all that kind of thing.
But also, I mean, I think this is not going to solve the problem, because these folks are fairly well tanked up before they get on the aircraft. So they're already several lagers in.
But where do you stop it, Nev? That's the thing. Where do you stop it? Because I confess to having been one of those people who will enjoy a pint of cider at the airport at 6 a.m. just because I'm officially in holiday mode. I'd like to think that I'm not a moron on the aeroplane.
Oh, no, even I would agree with that.
Thank you. But genuinely, where do you stop with that? I mean, do you then start limiting how much people can drink in the Wetherspoons, for example? I mean, most airports now have a Wetherspoons. Certainly in the major London airports, there's a Wetherspoons that you can go and have a pint or two and an all-day breakfast, because once again, those are the rules. Where do you draw the line?
It's a lot of pressure on the gate staff, isn't it?
Yeah.
As well, because they don't want to have someone on the aircraft that the captain then has to get involved with and then, delay the flight and all the rest of it. And I'm sure there's people boarding aircraft that have had far too much to drink and really shouldn't be on the aircraft. I think this is just an ongoing problem that it's never properly been solved, and obviously if it's not solved at the gate or during the boarding process, then this is where you get delays, cancellations, diversions, and all the rest of it.
Well, and a mutual friend of ours, Nev, obviously had to restrain a passenger only this week on the airline that they work for, having to sort of deal with, and they were drunk and causing a nuisance and all that kind of thing. And one of the comments that they made was it wasn't so much the restraining them and that, it's like they're desperate to not have to do it, purely because of the paperwork it generates for all these people who have, rather than just finish their shift, disappear off home and go to bed, they're having to stay behind for an hour and a half, talking to security, talking to HR and all that kind of thing in regards to the paperwork they've got to fill in to dot the I's and cross the T's of what happened in the air, and all because somebody didn't know their limits.
I feel that Jeff is going to contribute something major at this point.
Well, I have a question. So, and perhaps I just didn't read the article thoroughly, but does not Ryanair offer and serve alcoholic beverages on their flights?
Yes. Yes, absolutely they do. Yeah, indeed. And I dare say, if they bought all of the alcohol on their flight, I see. Like perhaps buying it. Can they do duty-free alcohol on the airplane, Nev? No.
Well, I think this is the way I took it. They're buying duty-free in order to have much less expensive alcohol on their flight, and not buy the alcohol from the airline on the flight.
Yeah.
And so I don't, I can see that. I can see why they'd want to offer their own alcohol service, and because they make some money on it, and they can control it a little bit more effectively than the people that are just, dipping in or whatever, breaking into their own duty free. Now, maybe I'm misunderstanding the whole thing, but that's what I got from it.
Well, I don't have a problem with Ryanair saying, yeah, absolutely, but stick it in the hold. I personally don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's a very sensible thing. And I suppose, if they're buying it, I know it's more expensive, obviously, to buy it online. But if you really do want a vodka and tonic, for example, in the air, and you're, then buy it from cabin crew. But of course, they will if you start looking like you're getting a bit leery and carried away with yourself, then presumably cabin crew mode kicks in, safety cabin crew mode kicks in, rather than serving drinks mode will kick in and say, no, I think you've had enough. Whether that would then create an incident off the back of that or not, I guess, is a difficult call.
I don't know what the policies are of all the world airlines or all the U.S. airlines, but I know that the airline for which I fly, you are not allowed to drink anything that you've taken on board with you, including duty free. So it's been that way for many, many years here at Acme Airlines. So I think they're just kind of following what a lot of operating or procedures are for many airlines around the world.
Well, and I suspect that scenario has been in place for a while here, to be honest with you, Jeff. I think it's probably just that people are sneaking a whiff or two, if you like, out of their overhead baggage, if you see what I mean, just to sort of do it. It's I'm with Ryanair on this one. I think it's a good shout, and I hope in lots of ways that the likes of Jet2 and EasyJet especially, Jet2, I mean, goodness knows, I mean, I swear we cover one of their stories every week where things have not gone according to plan in terms of in-flight. There always seems to be fights breaking out, which breaks my heart, because Jet2 is a wonderful airline, that really looks after their passengers. But I hopefully, perhaps some of the other low-cost air carriers will follow suit, if you like, to sort of back Ryanair up a bit, I guess, on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So the next story is another story with some difficulty, shall we say. Jeff's going to talk us through the story here.
Now, let me see. So we talked about alcohol and the Brits, and now we're talking about drugs. So obviously, the American is going to cover it. Okay. Let's see. This is from elpaís.com. Is that what that says? Okay.
The English version, no less.
Oh, yes. English.elpaís.com/international. Okay, on Tuesday, the Bolivian government acknowledged that drug trafficking has permeated police, customs, airports, and the state-owned airline Boliviana de Aviation. Wow, that's pretty good. I should ring my bell.
That's very nice. Yes, I like that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Last week, it was revealed that members of these institutions allowed 484 kilograms of cocaine to be transported to Madrid on a commercial flight on February 12, and subsequently prevented the incident from being detected by internal security mechanisms. It's believed that the beneficiary of this network of collusion within the state was an international drug trafficking organization with links to Bolivia and Spain. The three ministers in charge of the state agencies concerned in the narco fight affair appeared before the press Tuesday to try to quell the barrage of criticism that had begun a few days earlier. The country had spent almost a week talking about a BOA flight last February on which half a ton of drugs had been discovered. The aircraft of the country's leading commercial airline was parked at Madrid's Adolfo Suarez Airport. Two former presidents who lead the opposition from opposing sides, Evo Morales and Carlos Mesa blamed Luis. Now, did just an aside here, did Liz put you guys up to me doing this particular story with all the hard to pronounce names?
I can't possibly comment.
Okay. All right. Blamed Luis Arce's government over the affair. The protection of drug trafficking by his ministers is clearly proven, tweeted Morales, who had elevated Arce. Am I saying that right? Arce? To the presidency. I should know the president, but I don't, and whom he now accuses of leading the internal right of his party. Mesa demanded the intervention of the entities involved. The enormous cocaine shipment transported with the Bolivian airline shows the penetration of drug trafficking in the governments of the Movement for Socialism, Morales and Arce's party, and institutional and political complicity, he wrote. I'm getting lost in all this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, we get the gist. To be honest with you, Jeff,
okay.
Honestly, it's one of those, isn't it? It's. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, you could probably say this across the world, couldn't you? Really, to be fair, I mean, we're reading a story involving Madrid and Bolivia, but it could be. You could argue that this is happening across the world, really. I guess in terms of what's going on there. It's. The conversations about how to stop it, I guess, will always be rife. I mean, you can use the alcohol argument as the same sort of the same yardstick, can't you? Really, in terms of sort of trying to find answers to this, but it's not.
I think obviously there's quite a few people that were complicit in this, I would imagine. Because this doesn't just happen. Half a ton of cocaine.
It's not a small number, is it?
That's a huge amount.
Yes, indeed, absolutely.
What if that was on the load sheet, Jeff? Probably not.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how they classified the cargo.
No,
hazardous goods, perhaps.
Pharmaceuticals.
Talcum powder. What category would that go under? Yeah. Just like health and
personal hygiene.
Personal hygiene. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Energy drink. Would it go under that? No.
Yeah, it could be.
Quite
true.
Yeah, indeed. There we go. Yeah, let's abort this one before we end up all in court or something, shall we?
Abort.
Absolutely. Amen
family
to that.
Show.
Yeah, indeed. Family show, ladies and gentlemen. Family show. Quite.
Next one. Nick's going to have a go at this one for us. This is an interesting one about animals on the runway, or on the taxiway, at least, by the looks of things.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sad one, this, I think. It comes from cbsnews.com, and it's caused a little bit of controversy in the USA with a wild moose that's managed to go and do a bit of plane spotting, I think. So a moose killed after wandering onto Bradley Airport in Connecticut. Environmental officials killed a moose in Connecticut after it wandered onto the grounds of a major airport. The moose was spotted Friday morning wandering along a road at Bradley International Airport, and officials decided to put the animal down, citing safety concerns for air travellers and drivers along a nearby highway. When moose are roaming in high traffic areas such as airports and public roadways, it can be a public safety concern, and both the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and airport staff are authorised to euthanize a moose if deemed necessary, a spokesman for the department said in a statement. The animal never breached the perimeter fence that protects the airport runways, and no flights were affected. The animal had not been injured, and it's unclear why the animal could not be moved. The department did not immediately respond to a request for additional comment on Sunday. It's estimated there are between 100 and 150 moose in Connecticut. Airport spokeswoman said officials constantly monitor threats from wildlife in the area and have comprehensive strategies to ensure that the airport is prepared to handle any wildlife-related situations. Bradley International Airport is New England's second largest airport, behind only Logan in Boston, and serves Connecticut and Western Massachusetts. Is that one you've flown into, Jeff?
Oh, yeah. Many, many times.
Any wildlife?
Well, the layovers.
Quite.
Obviously a joke.
Yeah.
No, I've not. I don't recall ever, except for birds. But birds are everywhere. But no, I've not seen anything like a moose or anything large like that up there at Bradley.
This is a really tough one for me because I completely understand why people are upset about it. And the question has been raised, isn't it, of why no effort was made to sort of move them on. But I guess once it's got into the fence, if it's like broken into the fence to get in there in the first place, it's not necessarily going to be very easy to corner to get sort of back out again, because there's not like a big gate that you can let them out of, to sort of to avoid having to euthanize the animal. I mean, these incidences I do feel are quite minimal, and obviously it is very sad that this has had to be done, but I don't know, I feel like they've got to do what's the safest thing to do in terms of an active airfield and all that kind of thing, haven't they? I mean, I don't know. It's a really tough call.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like it's sort of bad planning in a way if wildlife are able to kind of access the area and the roads quite so easily. But then I guess, at what point do you, you can't stop a large animal wandering onto a road, and ultimately, if it wanders along that road far enough, it's going to get to an airport. So it is a tricky one, and it's hard to be able to shut them out entirely. So
I must say, all my trips in Scandinavia, certainly, especially in Sweden and Norway, the fences are extremely high around the wooded areas, even on the roads, so that moose and elk and all the rest of it just can't get over them. And it's a huge amount of work for the contractors to do all this, obviously, but it's the only way to do it. Is to keep them in one place.
So I'm reading this article and seeing the photograph that was included in it. It's hard for me to tell, is the moose on what side of the fence is this moose on? It doesn't look like it's on the actual side where the taxiways and the runways are. It looks more like an access road around.
I don't believe it was airside from what I understand. Right.
And the other thing I'm wondering, maybe they just don't have the facilities to do this, or the tools. But I would imagine, couldn't you just use some kind of a tranquilizing?
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Gun, and then safely transport the animal back into a safer area and not kill it. I don't know. Doesn't seem like.
Well, as you're saying, and if it is in an area like you say, Jeff, where it looks like it's an access road rather than sort of actually on like the runway or taxiways or whatever, presumably there would have been time to call for a vet, for example, who would have access to the tranquilizers and tranquilizer darts and guns in order to be able to subdue the animal, in order to be able to remove them safely from the argument. Perhaps it was a knee-jerk reaction or a knee-jerk call, and they're receiving more of a reaction perhaps than they were expecting to doing this. As you say, it's difficult not to feel like that they could have done more to not have to euthanize the animal, which it's certainly based on that photograph and the article in the story wasn't actually. I mean, I suppose it was endangering the airfield, but it wasn't on the airfield at the time that they made the call. But then, when do you pull? When do you make that call? When do you make the decision? Because it could potentially, obviously, have endangered aircraft and all sorts of things. Such a tough.
Well, perhaps the moose didn't get pushback or taxi clearance. So
true. Yeah.
Step in.
Not listening to the comms on the ATC. Yeah. No. Yeah. Terrible.
Liz Piper, Canadian.
Yes.
She lives up in Canada, and they have lots of these huge creatures up there. I'm wondering, maybe she'd be the one to ask for expert advice on how to handle the situation. She's in our live chat room.
Indeed, absolutely.
Maybe she can tell us what to do.
And while we're waiting for Liz, actually, Captain Ridiculous Wits is saying, point being, if they kill it, they still have to dispose of its body. So if they trank it, then there's no difference other than the animal will wake up in the woods. essentially. So yeah, that's true. You can't just leave the body there, can you? So they might as well have tranked to it and done something with it. Ultimately, it's our fault that the wildlife are in danger because we built our airport on their home, and they don't know any better, which is a very good point. And Liz is saying now that I do think tranquilizing it would be a good option. I feel like the decision to euthanize. I mean, I wasn't there. Let's be honest. None of us were there. We don't really know the full circumstances of why that decision was made. But as Liz is sort of saying there, I do feel like more effort could have been done to sort of save the animal, if you see what I mean. Personally, that is. Personally.
No, very good point. Very good point. Now, talking of the chat room, if you would like to have a guess as to how many passenger airlines are still operating the Boeing 747, now is the time to do it. There's no competition prize for this one, just a matter of interest, because we're going through books at a fairly big rate of knots at the moment, so we haven't got time or the resources to do another competition, but just for fun. If you'd like to tell us in the chat room how many you think are still going, because I'm just going to read them to you now. So the list of remaining operators is actually quite short, and it's getting shorter by the day, because back in 2020 several former major operators of the type, including Qantas, Virgin Atlantic, KLM and British Airways, all retired their 747 fleets early due to the pandemic. However, there are still a handful of operators operating the Dash 400 series and the Dash 8 for passenger services. One of them is Air China. They're listed as having 10 in their fleet. One of these is a specially configured 747-8, which is used for VIP services, with the airline operating 9 others, which are 747 400s and 747-8s. However, only one 747-400 and 3 747-800s are currently active. For the past 7 days, the 747-400, registered as Bravo 2447, has operated the same route every day between Beijing and Shenzhen. The carrier's 747-8s, meanwhile, have an average age of just over 8 years old and are regularly deployed on both domestic and long-haul services from its Beijing base, including to Frankfurt and New York JFK. Asiana Airlines has just one 747-400 in its fleet, registered as Hotel Lima 7428. The aircraft carries up to 398 passengers in a 3-class configuration, 10 in first class, 24 in business class, and 364 in economy. In recent days, the Seoul-based carrier has been deploying the aircraft on regional routes to Ho Chi Minh City and Shanghai, as well as the busy domestic corridor to Jeju. Seoul to Jeju was the world's busiest airline route in 2022 by the number of flights, with a total of 44,180 flights over the year. And you can see the top 10 busiest routes in this report from the simpleflying.com team. Atlas Air is a charter airline. It's got a fleet of 5 passenger 747-400s. Although these fly solely on a wet lease basis, so only 2 of them are currently listed on chaviation.com. They are November 481 Mike Charlie and November 482 Mike Charlie, both 22-year-old former Virgin Atlantic jets. Atlas Air is currently operating both aircraft on behalf of the US Air Force. Korean Air, as one of only 3 passenger airlines to take delivery of the passenger Boeing 747-8, Korean Air has 10 of the type. The carrier received its first 747-8 in August 2015, and today the aircraft is an average age of 7 years old. These are configured with 6 seats in first class, 48 in business class, and 314 in economy. 9 of the Sky team members' 10 747-8s are... Oh, I don't know what's happened with my screen suddenly. That's a bit odd. Where are we? 747-8s are currently active and operated flights to Atlanta, Paris, and New York's JFK. Lufthansa is now the largest passenger Boeing 747 operator. Whilst many airlines chose to retire their 747-400s, the German flag carrier instead opted to bid farewell to the far newer Airbus A380. The airline currently has a total of 8 747-400s and 19 747-9s in its fleet, all of which are active. In 2023, Lufthansa had been sending its 747-400s to the likes of Delhi, Toronto and Seoul. In spring 2022 and again this year, the carrier also deployed its 371-seat -400s on a limited number of short-haul services excuse me, between Frankfurt and Mallorca. When it comes to the airline's -8s, they can often be seen in long-haul destinations ranging from Sao Paulo to Singapore and Mexico City. Iran's Ryanair is listed as having just one of the aircraft, 747-400. The 33-year-old aircraft started its life with United Airlines and has been with Ryanair since 2008. It's also been recently spotted in Dubai and Moscow. But after years of sanctions, Iran is no stranger to aging aircraft. In fact, the average age of the entire fleet of their aircraft is almost 29 years old, and the airline does not operate an aircraft younger than 20 years old. Finally, Max Air is a Nigerian carrier founded in 2008 and currently operates one 747-400 passenger aircraft. The airline previously had 3 of them, but subsequently sent 2 of them to the US for retirement. The one remaining aircraft still flies regularly to a variety of routes, the majority of them between Nigeria and Saudi Arabia, such as Kano and Medina. So that makes a total of 7 operators.
I must admit, it's more than I thought, Nev, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I sort of had this vision that... I mean, I know they're still very prevalent in the cargo world, aren't they? I mean, there are lots of 747s still flying because of the sheer weight that they can carry, isn't it? That's essentially it, isn't it? 4 big engines, you know, plenty of tonnage available there. In stark contrast to the question that you set, of course, this week when we were talking about Concorde, for example. Yeah. It's. Yeah, I'm so pleased to see that there are still several opportunities. I mean, I must admit, they're not airlines that I would recognise per se. You know, other than like Lufthansa and stuff. I guess I'd stand a chance of possibly flying on one of theirs somewhere. But
yes.
But yeah, it's you know, it is such an iconic aircraft. I'm still, to be honest with you, surprised that, you know, so many have been retired so soon. If you see what I mean. I mean, I know it's an old aircraft, but I mean that some of the ones that they retired weren't old. If you see what I mean. I
suppose it's the operating costs, 4 engines versus 2 engines. I mean, the thing is, with the long routes and the ETOPS routes that the 2-engine aircraft fly these days, the reliability of the engines is just phenomenal. I think if they had had problems in obtaining, you know, ETOPS certification for some of the 2-engine airliners, people would have kept with the 4. But the reliability of these is just so good, and obviously we're getting to the stage now where we're getting very fuel efficient engines as well. Then, you know, it makes a lot of sense. I do miss the 74 though. I think it's been a great aircraft over a very long period of time, many decades of operation. And when Carlos and I went on the 747-400 coming back from Dubai from the air show in 2019, little did we know when we were talking to the the flight deck crew when they shut down, that just a matter of months later, BA would actually withdraw all the aircraft from its fleet.
So forgive my naivety on this one. Hopefully you might be able to give me a clue on this. But so the 74 versus the 380. So the 380 is coming back into service. I know it's newer than the 74, but is it pure? I mean, is there a huge difference between what the 380 can carry versus the 74?
A little bit more. I mean, I think that the engine efficiency and fuel consumption is the thing that really, isn't it? And also flexibility. Some of those A380s are used actually for some very short haul routes in some cases, but very high density or high capacity routes, certainly in the Middle East and the Far East as well. Whereas in Western Europe, they tended to be used by Lufthansa and British Airways and Emirates for going across the pond, often to the west coast of the US and other places as well. But of course, the 380 has been discontinued as well. That's the other thing.
True, yeah. Although many are being popped back into service post-COVID now, aren't they? That's the thing. Jeff, have you had much experience with the 747?
No. In fact, I've only been inside one while it was on the ground, parked. And took a little view or a little tour of the cockpit area of the jet. But no, I've never actually been on one as a passenger, and obviously have never flown one myself. No.
Have you been anywhere? Have you had a chance to go anywhere near a 380?
I've been at airports where there have been 380s.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
Like
me then. Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I've not set foot on one or touched one or. Well, I guess the closest I've been is the Farnborough International.
Yes, I was going to mention that, of course, because you and Nev and a couple of other people got the opportunity to have a nose round the high fly one, wasn't it? That was at Farnborough. Was it 2016?
I think.
Yeah, it was
the first one. I think.
Yeah. Oh. Absolutely. It's a interesting sort of one, really. But so there are still a handful of 74s still out there, passenger variants that you could still catch a ride on, I guess. Did anybody get it right in the chat room? By the way, did anybody get a number?
I think they did. I didn't see any that said there were 7 operators. Matt, no, we had some guesses of 3 and 14, 2, but no, 7 is the answer. Talking of long haul operations, Qantas are at it again.
Indeed.
Flightglobal.com, Matt.
They are indeed, yes, absolutely. The headline on this one is Qantas relaunches New York route in direct competition to Air New Zealand. So Qantas has relaunched flights to New York after a 3-year hiatus, this time operating via Auckland and directly competing with trans-Tasmanian rival Air New Zealand. Flight QF3, operated by a Boeing 787-9, took off from Sydney on the 14th of June, first bound for Auckland before setting off for New York's John F. Kennedy Airport. Qantas will operate thrice weekly flights, increasing to 4 times a week from October. The airline operated to New York pre-pandemic, but via Los Angeles. The rerouting via Auckland means that Qantas is the second carrier to fly between Auckland and New York. Air New Zealand operates the flagship route thrice weekly, having launched it in September 2022. The airline will, in 2024, retrofit aircraft operating the route with the new cabin products, including its game-changing economy bunk bed concept known as Skynest. As for Qantas, its 787 seat 236 passengers in 3 classes. The airline adds that it has been using advanced cloud-based flight planning systems that model flights paths, measuring flights times and winds to determine the optimal route, an indirect reference to the weather woes that affected rival Air New Zealand's New York flights. At just over 16 hours, the Auckland-New York leg is Qantas's 3rd longest route. The Perth to London route, which is 17 hours and 45 minutes, and Dallas to Melbourne, which is 17 hours and 25 minutes, are the longest routes in the Qantas network. Airline chief Alan Joyce says since international borders reopened, New York has been one of the most popular destinations for our customers who have been connecting on our partners from Qantas flights arriving into Los Angeles and Dallas. So it's not surprising that we've seen very strong demand since for our New York flights that went on sale. The launch comes as Qantas moves closer to launching non-stop flights from Australia's east coast to New York and London under the Project Sunrise programme. Qantas expects to launch the ultra-long haul flights by the end of 2025 with a fleet of Airbus A350-1000s. There we go.
Oh, that's going to be a slog, isn't it? Honestly. I mean,
It does feel like a really long flight, doesn't
I
it?
don't know what the longest flight you've ever done. Mine was Heathrow to Singapore, I think, which is about 13 and a half hours. And that's about as much as I could stomach, to be honest with you, without a break.
I think the longest flight I ever did was actually not so much. It wasn't London to Kuala Lumpur. It was the Kuala Lumpur to New Zealand leg that I think was just shy of 13 hours. And I was very ready to get off that aircraft when I got to the other end.
So this next story is on the FAA.gov website, and it concerns cockpit flight deck security. I thought we dealt with that in previous times after 9/11, but there's some more information about this. Jeff, could you give us your opinion about this and read it for us as well?
Sure. Let me read, and then I'll give you my opinion.
Yeah.
This is from FAA.gov, and let's see. Installation and operation of flight deck installed physical secondary barriers on transport category airplanes. Just kind of rolls off the tongue. Excerpts from the report. This final rule implements Section 336 of the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018. It's about time. That was about 5 years ago. Requiring the installation and use of the installed physical secondary barrier, IPSB, that will be deployed, closed, and locked whenever the flight deck door is opened while the airplane's in flight. This final rule affects operators conducting passenger carrying operations under Title 14 of the Code of Federal Regulations, or what we like to call the FARs, Part 121, with transport category airplanes operating in the U.S. by requiring the operators to use the IPSB when installed as part of their procedures for opening up the flight deck door. Affected operators must comply with this rule when operating transport category airplanes manufactured 2 years after the effective date of this final rule. Okay, so it's going to be another 2 years after they make this effective that manufacturers have to install these things, I guess. In this final rule, the FAA estimates costs of $35,000 for the purchase and installation of an IPSB. After the addition of training and other costs, the present value cost for this rule are $236.5 million, $20.3 million annualized at 7% discount rate, and $505 million, $29 million annualized at a 3% discount rate. Not sure what any of that means. It's just going to cost a lot of money, I guess. When the flight deck door must be open for lavatory breaks, meal service, or crew changes, the flight deck could be vulnerable to attack. The benefit of this rule requiring installation and use of IPSBs on airplanes in Part 121 service is to slow such an attack long enough so that an open flight deck door can be closed and locked before an attacker could reach the flight deck. Given the foregoing, the FAA continues to determine that a 2-year compliance time as proposed by the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking is appropriate. Shall I continue reading this, or is that enough?
Yeah, well, I think we've definitely got the gist of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Gosh, this is... well, so I've got many questions here, but I don't know about your airline, Jeff, but many airlines, if there is going to be a lav break from one of the 2 flight deck crew members, either, certainly what I've seen on British Airways, is that a senior cabin crew member has to stand in front of the door, even though it's shut and locked, or they have to be on the flight deck to accompany the first officer or the captain, depending on who's vacated it. But I can't quite understand here why we're sort of putting extra security in when I'm assuming that the existing facility surely is adequate, because this has been in place since just after the 9/11 attacks.
Well, it's just an added piece of deterrent because even when you have somebody standing there and perhaps maybe beverage carts or meal carts in front of and kind of blocking being used as a secondary barrier. Anything that could possibly strengthen that deterrent measure would be appropriate. And I think that there are ways that an attacker could get by some of the present procedures that we're using to, to block access to the flight deck door. I think that's the whole purpose of it, just to kind of make a much more difficult go of it for a terrorist to try to gain access to the flight deck. And at my airline, if there is a jump seater or an extra crew member up there, one of the pilots can leave, and it does not have to have somebody like a cabin crew to come into the cockpit itself. That only happens when there is only two pilots up there and one of them has to leave. So you never want to leave just one pilot, by themselves up there. So that's why we have a cabin crew member, and not necessarily the senior cabin crew member. It may appear that way in your experience, Nev, and maybe that's the procedure with British Airways. But with us, it's just one of the flight attendants has to come up there and be in place while one of the pilots has left the flight deck and is using a lavatory. But but the funny thing is, you said, well, haven't we, hasn't this been something that people have been talking about implementing for quite some time, like since 9/11, basically, or just a few years after? Yes, the Airline Pilots Association, the union basically that represents most of the professional airline pilots in the U.S. have been begging for this to be put into legislation, and the requirement of this kind of secondary barrier be put in place. And finally, more than 20 years after the 9/11 attacks, they're actually looking like they're going to seriously implement this procedure, or not procedure, but device. But again, it's only going to be 2 years after this is signed and put into effect, and only new aircraft. There's no requirement that I can see that will have the airlines putting, retrofitting current airplanes with this kind of secondary barrier.
It's a funny one, isn't it? I suppose it's I mean, is the answer, for example, putting a toilet, if you like, in the the crew has access to without having to leave the cockpit, for example?
That would be the best solution, but obviously that's probably extremely expensive, and the engineering involved to make for airplanes that are going to be built in the future, perhaps maybe it would still probably be more expensive than this IPSB device. But I agree with you. I mean, if you just stay up there and not have to leave the flight deck at all, would be the best solution.
Although I suppose you guys still need feeding. Let's be honest. I suppose.
Well, not in the airplane that I fly. We don't ever get fed anything because they're such short flights. Yeah. But if you're doing long haul, unless you have some kind of a way to get the meals and the used dishes and items after the meal has been consumed into and out of the cockpit area without having to open up a door or whatever. There are a lot of logistics that are kind of hard to work around, I think.
Indeed. Now, we do have some pictures, I think, of some of the proposed designs. I'm just trying to find that now as a way of sort of solving the issue, for want of a better word. I don't really know a lot about, sort of like almost like a cage, I suppose, if you like, sort of like between the cockpit door and the thing. But I mean, so using this picture, so I'm trying to think how best to describe this to. So if you're at the front of the airplane, the bit where you would normally find like the galley and the toilet at the front of your average aircraft. There appears to be like a cage, well, not a cage, but it
kind of reminds me of a children's stairgate.
But for grown-ups, essentially,
Yes.
between you and the cockpit door. So, I mean, the only issue there would be, maybe that's the other issue, is the fact that you don't let people at the front use the toilet, and that is reserved exclusively for cabin crew and pilots, maybe, and then everybody else has to troop off to the back, where there are more loos anyway. I mean, that's a short-term solution, perhaps.
Right.
I mean, that's one option, and then have your security gate, as it shows in the picture here, as one way of doing it. Another design from a different airline, but the concept is still the same, basically. I think, really. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just like maybe we need to find a way of eradicating people who are likely to do bad things. Maybe that's the long-term solution.
I think we've been trying to do that
Good luck.
for many centuries.
Well, quite, yes.
But,
are you suggesting we're nowhere nearer to doing that, Nev?
They're just getting clever, aren't they?
They are, indeed.
Now, there's a story this week regarding Ryanair, where they have dismissed their chief pilot because of inappropriate behaviour. Regarding training and regarding interface with 7 junior female pilots who are aged between 21 and 32. I don't want to go into any of the detail of that particularly for obvious reasons, but honestly, it's shocking, isn't it? Really?
It is.
Someone with that level of seniority and presumably has spent, a very large part of his life flying and getting to that level of seniority where you're a chief pilot for that kind of airline, and you
even I
make
was quite
a series of errors, not just one or two, but many.
No.
And it's tragic, really, isn't it, for the people involved, but also for himself, because he allowed himself to get into that situation and made other people feel very uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
By the things.
Indeed. But if you are interested in that story, I will make sure that I include a link, I should say, into it from our show notes. So if you want to get the very latest on that, as I say, it's quite a shocking read, to be honest with you. But I thought those days were behind us, to be honest with you. Turns out it doesn't seem to be the case.
Anyway, let's get back on to more pleasant things now, shall we? Nick and I and Carlos went to RAF Cosford for the air show last weekend. What did you think, Nick? Did you enjoy it?
It was fantastic. Yeah, what a great day out. I was really pleasantly surprised, actually. I'd never been before, so I didn't know what to expect, and I was quite impressed by the scale of the air show in terms of the physical size of the actual kind of showground that was set up. The amount of exhibits on the ground. There's an awful lot of aircraft, static aircraft on the ground that you could go and look at, and a tremendous amount of exhibits on behalf of various different elements of the RAF, for example. And then obviously a huge diversity of aircraft doing flying displays as well. So yeah, we had a great time.
I'll tell you what, Nev, shall we play the clip? I've
Yes.
got a question I want to ask Nick afterwards, actually. So let's play the clips and see what he makes of it.
Well, the sun is shining, and we've got a prime position here for our first piece of video for the show this week. The DC-3 behind us, and Nick has joined us as well.
Good morning.
Your first outing to an air show here, Nick.
Fantastic, loving
With
it.
us, with the team.
Yep, it's great to be here.
It was a bit of a effort, I should say, getting in here, but you got in the end.
I got here in the end. Yep. So I've had a nice little tour around the airfield and its environs. So, but yeah, finally made it in, and great to be here with you guys, and absolutely amazed at how busy it is and how much there is to see here. It's fantastic.
Nev, after yesterday's journey in, the weather was slightly strange coming up here, but for you, obviously you arrived this morning.
Yeah, it was 31 degrees yesterday at home, and still quite warm here today, but didn't have any of the rain business at all. been very well looked after by the media team here with Chris Wilson and his team. Excellent. Chris was saying as well that they're expecting around about 10,000 youngsters here, so that's really good for future recruitment, I would have thought, in the military and civil aviation world, which is great stuff. So that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah.
But we've got a nice media centre, haven't we? Tea and coffee, and it's and a car parking as well is quite good for us guys as well. We can.
We've done a quick recce of the food situation,
yes.
and I think Captain Al would be impressed.
Definitely be impressed. Yeah.
He wouldn't be impressed at the prices though, but he'd be impressed at the quality of the food. But,
yeah. We've had the airshow bacon roll already this morning, which has been really good, and we've already filled our boots. Nick, you're yet to have a bacon roll.
Yeah, I need to take care of these priorities quite urgently.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a great day. The sun is shining, and we're hoping that I think the weather was due to stay off until at least sort of 2 or 3 p.m. this afternoon.
I think most
so
of the
should be
time
good.
Should be right.
Yeah. So all good, all being well. With great lineup as well of aircraft here displaying, and static aircraft as well, which I'm sure we'll see very soon. So I think RAF Cosford Airshow 2023. Shall we get going?
Let's go and do
Let's
it.
go.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you had an absolutely amazing time, guys.
That was the cooler part of the day.
Yeah, I bet. Now, obviously, Nick, I'm asking this to Nick because obviously you've only just joined the team, and welcome to the team, of course. Now, you attended an air show. Is this the first time that you've ever attended an air show with media access?
It was, yes. It felt like a tremendous privilege. I was very, very excited when my passes turned up in the post, and I proudly displayed my press badge hanging from the rear view mirror of my car, which entitled me to some parking within the confines of the base itself. So I was able to sort of drive on in and get right into the action. And I have to say, actually, that the team at Cosford did an amazing job. It was tremendously well organised, not only in terms of the way they were marshalling all the members of the public in and getting everybody parked, but the level of facilities that were there and the sheer amount of stuff that they had available for members of the public to go and look at. I have to say, it even if I'd paid to get in, it would have been tremendously good value.
Yeah, indeed. I mean,
give the APG folks a bit of a name check. Of course, RAF Cosford is where Captain Nik did one of his first lectures for the Royal Aeronautical Society as well.
It was, yeah. Absolutely.
Which was very well received by all the members up there. Sorry, Matt, I cut across you there.
Yeah, you filmed that one, didn't you, Nev? Didn't you
Yes.
You went and attended that one, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I must say, one of the things I love, we're very, very lucky here. I mean, what is so lovely is, obviously getting into the throes of the air show, getting involved and all that kind of thing. But I don't know how you feel about it, Nev. It's so lovely to be able to just take yourself away to a little quiet area and enjoy a cup of tea, just to sort of, it's the whole English thing, isn't it? Just relax a moment or two before, and just have a moment's peace before you then go off back out into the air show. That's what I love about the media places and all that kind of thing.
But Chris and the media team were very, very accommodating, I must say, and it was our first trip there, and we should be going back for some more, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Indeed.
So once we were there, lots of static aircraft displays. However, one of the most significant ones was the Hercules C-130J, and of course it's going to be its last trip around the United Kingdom this week. It may have even completed all of that now.
Wow.
But we were lucky
to see.
Wednesday. Oh, that's right, it was, wasn't it? On Wednesday, yes, you're right. So we were very lucky to go and see it and have a word with one of the fellas who was standing next to it. So his name's Howard Fieldman, and here he is talking to Carlos.
So you join me at the C-130J Hercules here. I'm here with Howard Fielder. How are you, Howard?
I'm all right, thank you very much.
Good, thanks for letting us come here and see the amazing aircraft we're standing next to. And tell us a bit about yourself. What's your role here?
So I'm the senior engineer for 47 Squadron, so I manage the people and lead the engineering on the last remaining C-130 Squadron.
That's great. So you've got quite an in-depth job, very technical job, I would say.
Yeah, it is. it is a technical job. It's a big leadership challenge as well, but it has a lot of technical elements. The aircraft keeps us interested and keeps us entertained every day.
So how did your aviation career passion start for you? Was it at an early age?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a lot of people who get into this field, it was things like going to sitting at the end of the runway at Fairford, watching Vulcans take off after the air show and feeling that rattle in your chest and things like that. So, you know, those visceral feelings from the aircraft that have now left us. So yeah, that's what got me into it, yeah.
So your career start, are you a pilot yourself, or is it you're purely kind of the engineering side of things?
Yeah, firmly feet on the ground. I'm definitely keep the aircraft fixed from the ground, yeah.
So progression on to, obviously you went to school, done your exams and stuff, and then went on through, was it the Royal Air Force was kind of the vision for you for your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought about joining the RAF right the way through my formative years at school and going to university, and studied engineering, and always felt that it would be a good career. Obviously there's always been a temptation to go to industry, but the RAF career sort of stood out as one where there's a lot of variety and a lot of a lot of responsibility as well. Yeah.
We talked to a lot of pilots on the show, and obviously pilots within the Royal Air Force who fly aircraft. Obviously everyone thinks, you know, the Royal Air Force is flying. All you do is fly aircraft, become a pilot. But obviously there is the engineering side, which is a side I think that most people don't kind of look as an avenue to go down to be within the Royal Air Force. Is it kind of, for you, is it you know, you love that aspect of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a lot of people who are technicians in the Air Force, and you think that's a growing area with the growing field of communications, cyber, and all that side of the house. We've got some 10,000 people in the RAF which are, you know, aligned to being a technician. So there's quite a few people, and they're in a growing field away from, you know, the traditional operations of just flying aircraft into the new space of operations such as cyber. So yeah, there's lots of technicians out there.
So Howard, tell us a bit about this amazing aircraft we're standing right next to.
Well, this is, as you say, it is an amazing aircraft. This is the mighty C-130J Hercules, the Super Hercules as some people call it, and the RAF's been operating this variant of C-130 since 1999, so now 24 years. And in total with the C-130K, we're just clocking up to 56 and a half years, which, as Chief of the Air Staff said last week, is the longest serving RAF aircraft in service, even longer than the Canberra, I'm told. And this aircraft is it's a really, really useful aircraft that has been operating in almost every conflict and every operation we've conducted since 1966 when we first got the aircraft.
So Howard, tell us a bit about, obviously there's tail art on here, which a lot of people have taken notice of today. We've seen it on here. What is that representing?
So the tail art, we've got a decal on the tail, which is trying to recognise the years of service of this aircraft and mark it out, so that when we were doing the flypasts, and there'll be a flypast on Wednesday on the 14th, and then the King's birthday flypast will be our last one. We're just trying to mark it out and honour those 56 years, but doing it in a way which has allowed us to operate these aircraft right away to the end. So doing an elaborate tail design would have been preclusive in order, given the fact that we came back from operations only last Sunday, so a week ago, we weren't able to put in place something more elaborate, because of course you need time to put it on, and then also should we get called to do anything, we need to be able to take it off again. So that, yeah, we went for a fairly simple design. I think it's quite elegant. It recognises those 56 years of operations across the two variants.
So what other trips have you got planned for this year? Obviously shows. We're here at RAF Cosford today, and obviously we're starting to get to the end now of obviously the tour with the aircraft. Where are the next sort of shows you'll be at this year?
So this is going to be our last show. So Cosford is our last air show. We've got some amazing crowds here today. I'm absolutely blown away by the queues to come and see the Hercules. And yeah, we won't be going to Riyadh obviously, because that is in July after we've gone out of service. So from here on in, we've got our national fly pass where many people from around the UK will get to see the aircraft, and that's now been published, so people that are interested can see where they can go to see the aircraft. And then of course we're going to be flying over London next Saturday for the King's birthday fly past alongside many other RAF and defence aircraft.
Oh, I'm sure. And will you be on board yourself?
I don't know. Like I said, firmly rooted to the ground. I think the national fly past is going to be a long flight in the medium and low level. So it could be very interesting for passengers. So I won't be on that. But there may be on the King's birthday, depending on how many people we want to take up on that aircraft.
So what is a retirement plan then for the aircraft? Do you know?
Well, like this, like any aircraft, we've got a great sales agency to try and get the best value from these aircraft when they go out of service. Clearly, in an ideal world, we get every last ounce of use out of these aircraft before they go out of service. These ones are roughly halfway through their life, so we will be selling them, and they're quite valuable assets. So we will be selling them. We've got 15 at the moment in the MOD, 5 remain in the forward fleet, but all of those 15 aircraft we will be looking to sell on, yeah.
I think it's safe to say many people know the Hercules is kind of built to last. It's one of those aircraft that you think of as being a bit like the B-52 that seems to go on and on and on. I think these aircraft will be flying for many years to come.
Yeah, well, the American philosophy is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, you look at some aircraft like the B-52, which they're talking about it being the first 100-year aircraft, and this is the same. I mean, some of these aircraft have gone through major servicings inside the last year, 18 months, and so some of them are now, have a bit like Trigger's Bryn. A lot of the components have been changed, and the only thing that's original on it is the airframe.
It's one of those questions that people ask us all the time. Is when you have an aircraft like this, is what will be its end of life? You see these companies around the globe that tend to have like tags made up of aircraft and stuff. And when you have an aircraft like this, which has that tail logo on, these aircraft become kind of collector's items in a sense. Are you a collector of aircraft parts yourself, like me?
I don't think I would say I am, but I mean, these aircraft, we've obviously looked at giving some elements to the RAF Museum and other museums in order to make sure that these aircraft their service is honoured. But honestly, they are very valuable assets, and they've got an operational future. So with hopefully some other nations. So yeah, I don't think we'll be doing too much of that. Certainly not tail fins, which are obviously a major part of the aircraft.
Coffee table made from a tail fin, that'd be nice, yeah. Just one last question, Howard. On the show, we always ask the people we talk to on the show this question. It's a kind of put you on the spot question as such in regards to aircraft. But if you were given the chance now, here at Cosford, to jump into an aircraft, albeit retired, still flying, GA, military, commercial, whatever, if it was here at Cosford, you were given the opportunity to get in and fly that aircraft, what would the aircraft be?
That is a very difficult question, and one that's probably got quite a controversial answer. But
you can have more than one answer.
Okay. It'd have to be either the Vulcan or the Lightning. The Lightning One. I think both of those aircraft are pretty iconic, and they're aircraft that I've seen fly, and I would definitely want to go up and have a look at them. I think I'm an engineer, and I hear the stories about the engineers that worked on the Vulcan to make them ready to launch within the set amount of time that were required to, and some of those elements. And I think that's the aircraft, Vulcan or definitely Vulcan or Lightning. Yeah.
Well, that's not one we get very often, so it's good to hear a difference in there. For me, I have to say, one of the things that I miss from the Royal Air Force, and those listeners of the show will know this because I go on about it all the time, mostly on the show, I do miss the TriStar.
Okay.
I really do miss the TriStar. I know some don't miss the TriStar. For me, I loved the L1011 TriStars that you guys used to have, obviously with the refuelling wing. And I have a piece at home in the office as well.
Do you?
Yes.
So I I do sort of miss the TriStar. I don't miss the very long journeys in and out of Afghanistan on a TriStar, but I do miss the aircraft. Yeah.
Was it right that we used to hear that they used to go tech a lot? For me, I never, I've flown on them as a child as a passenger version, but I always used to hear from the other members of the Royal Air Force that we talked to on the show. They used to say they used to go tech quite a bit.
So they were, wonderful aircraft, but they required quite a lot of care and maintenance. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I've got a piece of one at home anyway. But Howard, just want to say a big thanks to you for coming on the show. It's been great to speak to you today and talk about this aircraft and obviously the important role that you guys play and stuff. So we wish you all the best for the future, whatever you're up to, and thanks for taking time to speak to us today.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was great, wasn't it? And that was Howard Fielder there, and telling Carlos all about the C-130J, and what a tremendous aircraft that's been over many years. And of course, Jeff, you've got some past experience of heavy transport aircraft, haven't you?
Yeah, but before I tell you about that, can you still hear me?
Yes, all good.
Okay. Did you see the front of the airplane, the pilot coming out of the front door and kind of going like this? Like, get that guy out of here.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I flew the, as I was mentioning before my sound cut off, and I think that it's actually Matt that's doing it. But the C-141 Starlifter made by Lockheed, and that was the longest flight that I had taken, and it was a double air refueling flight, and it was quite long. It was somewhere between 15 and 17 hours, I believe. Can you still hear and see me?
Yes,
very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so anyway, it was a great airplane. Lockheed, I've flown 2 Lockheed jets, and one is the 141 Starlifter, and the other one, the civilian Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, which Carlos has a thing about.
Shoehorning into every possible interview, yeah.
But it's a beautiful airplane, best airplane I think I've ever flown in my life. But yeah, so what else did you want to know about the long haul lifestyle of the 141 that I flew basically for the U.S. Air Force Airlines? That's kind of the job that I was doing in the Air Force.
I mean, how does that compare? I mean, obviously most of your long haul stuff is sort of in your military career, and I'm sure you did a bit of long haul, obviously, when you were first with Acme. But like, how does that compare? How does like long haul flights compare with what happens in the commercial world?
They're very similar. In my experience, they were almost identical, because back in the day when I flew as a first officer on the L-1011 for Acme, it was a 3 pilot crew, so captain, first officer, and the second officer, which was the flight engineer. And back in those days, we didn't have breaks. We didn't have augmented crew, so we were in the seat the entire time of the flight. Which and a lot of these flights, I was flying a lot of the Hawaii flights out of Atlanta, and those could be 8, 9, 10 hours, sometimes even longer. The nonstop back might even be closer to 11, and we were in the seat the whole time, no breaks. So it was a different kind of, and that was the kind of flying that I was doing in the 141 in the Air Force as well. Nowadays, long haul flying is a little bit more, I don't know what the right word would be, comfortable, because you have more crew members to kind of spread the work periods out a little bit, and then you have a chance to leave the flight deck and go back in a crew rest facility, or at least a first class or business class seat, and take a little bit of a break, maybe 2, 3, 4 hour break before returning to the cockpit environment. And so it's a little bit different world, and I've not experienced that kind of long haul flying. So.
No, indeed. Any other questions, Nev, before we move on?
No. Only I just think that we should probably have Jeff on the show permanently, because he's so much more interesting than Carlos.
Well, cool.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hey, Carlos, I had nothing to do with this.
I should have just thought that. I shouldn't have said it. I beg you.
What?
Done it again,
And
Nev.
I have to say that, like, being fully involved in one podcast is enough for me on a full-time basis.
Quite absolutely. Indeed. Now, not Nev, I keep doing this. I don't know what's the matter with me at the moment. Jeff, very exciting news because not so many weeks away, probably just over 2 to 3 weeks away, you're actually coming to the UK.
Yes, I am. I plan on heading over, flying over like on the 1st or 2nd of July, and then staying at the Anderson Casa, Captain Nick's place with his lovely wife, Jilly. And at the end of that week, on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, for those of you out there who are Formula One fans, and I became a Formula One fan because of all of the bad time that everybody was giving me about the fact, because I used to be really into NASCAR racing, and people said, yeah, well, so, it's always going around a track turning left the whole time, and they kept giving me a bad time about that. You should check out Formula One. I went, okay, I did. And I got bitten by the Formula One bug, and I've been watching it now for a few years, and I love it. And I thought, you know what, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to see where it all started, basically. I believe that's correct.
Correct, very much.
The British Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at some tickets, and all the regular grandstand tickets were all kind of snapped up. I mean, this is back at the beginning of the year. They had already been sold out. So I ended up buying a couple of hospitality tickets.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
They're not cheap.
No, I can imagine. Cheap. Yeah, I bet. I bet.
And but anyway, Nick has never been to a Grand Prix, and he's a big fan of Formula One. And so I said, how would you like to go to the British Grand Prix? So that's what I'm actually going to be there for, which is that next weekend after I get there. But between the time that I arrive in London area, Nick's place, and the Formula One Grand Prix up at Silverstone. Is it Silverstone or Silverstone? I hear
Silverstone, I say. I have to say, yeah, absolutely. Silverstone.
And Silverstone. And so between that time, we thought it would be, I feel so bad because I'm going to be away from my country, the United States of America. And one of the important holidays for us as a nation is Independence Day, or otherwise known, a lot of people call it the 4th of July. Now, of course, the 4th of July is the 4th of July everywhere in the world. I mean, it's the 4th of July, just like the 4th of June, the 4th of May, the 4th of August. So there's no reason that you, as citizens of the United Kingdom, can't come and celebrate the 4th of July with me.
It sounds like a blooming good excuse to have a beer with an absolute couple of legends, to be honest with you. So I've popped it in my diary. I'm going to try and do everything I can to get there for it. It's on a Tuesday over at the Hendon RAF Museum. A little bit of a cheeky meet-up with Captain Jeff, Captain Nick, and I'm sure a few other people as well. Brace yourselves, everyone. The Yanks are coming to the UK.
Yeah, he keeps calling it Treason Day. What is it? Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and we're going to be going to the museum, and then after that, we're going to walk over to the Beaufort Pub, which is nearby, and so we're going to continue the meetup over there, and then after a suitable period of time, Nick and I will get back on the train and head back to Bliss. So
love it. Yes,
that's what our plan is. And may I quickly mention? I know I don't want to take up too much of your time. So after later in the week on Friday, most like Thursday or Friday, we'll head up more toward where the Grand Prix is going to take place, and we're going to be staying at Nigel's place outside of Banbury, and we're going to have a meetup on Friday evening. That's after the first and second free practices, we're going to head back to Nigel's place, and then we're going to have a meetup probably at Nigel's place or maybe a pub nearby. And so we'll have more information about that as the time approaches. So if you happen to live closer to that area, instead of, not right in London, but
on the outskirts,
I guess that would be like to the northwest.
Yes,
would that be right?
Correct.
Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to probably have a little meetup up there as well. So
sounds amazing. Well, as I say, I'm going to do everything I can to try and join you for that, because it just sounds like a too good an excuse not to come and visit two absolute legends.
Well, I'd love to see you, Matt.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. I'm going to do everything I can to do that one. Well, get it in your diaries. 4th of July is the one at Hendon, and then more details still to come about the one that's taking place sort of nearer to Silverstone. Watch APG for further details, I think, is the short answer to that one. Nev, we probably ought to do a bit of military, otherwise we'll upset Mr. Warner.
Do we have to?
Yes, we do.
I thought we just did some.
A little bit.
Yes. We did.
We did, absolutely.
We've got to do a bit more.
Indeed. Here we go, everyone. Brace yourselves.
Blast up bogies 135, 50, Angel 16, heading 340. Okay, now undersea bogies.
Well, this first military story comes to us from swissinfo.ch, and it concerns one of the highlights from the Cosford show, actually. It was the Patrouille Suisse, who performed a great display, actually, a really, really high-energy routine with loads of low passes and fast turns. They were really thrilling to watch. I really tremendously enjoyed them. So the headline is House Damage, Person Injured After Aerobatic Display Collision. So 2 aircraft from the Swiss military aerobatic display team collided on Thursday with falling debris hitting a house. 1 person on the ground was slightly injured in the accident. The 2 F-5 Tiger planes were part of a formation practicing for a yodeling festival in Zug in central Switzerland. We don't have those in the UK. The nose cone of one aircraft broke off and hit a house in the vicinity of the town Bar. That sounds like somewhere you might like to go, Jeff. Damaging the facade of the building and slightly injuring 1 person with shattered glass. The braking parachute of the other aircraft deployed in midair but caused no damage and was later recovered. All of the 7 aircraft involved in the practice session landed safely. No pilot was injured, according to the Defence Ministry. A military investigation has begun to ascertain the cause of the accident. The display for the yodeling festival has been cancelled, sadly.
Oh no. I mean, the good news is there obviously everybody is okay. That's the main.
Yeah. Oh, look at that!
That was a walk.
That was
That's a bit of talent at long last. Absolutely, bit of talent at long last. Indeed, it's as I say, it's awful when a display has to be cancelled, but everybody's okay. I think I still see that as a win personally. So there we go. It's
They did some amazing passes at the show, though. There were a couple of real low-level stuff where they were, it's one of those where they look like they're going to run into each other, and really amazing sort of fast turns coming in towards the crowd and then turning at the last moment. It was really tremendous to watch, I have to say. They're a really great team.
I bet.
Well, second military story. Jeff's going to tell us all about the military variant of the Leonardo AW609.
I can't wait to tell them. This is AINonline.com. Leonardo's acquisition of Bell's share of the AW609 tilt rotor program in 2011 raised widespread speculation regarding the terms of the agreement, specifically about whether it precluded an armed militarized version of the aircraft from ever coming to market. That conjecture increased last year when Leonardo Helicopters managing director Jean-Pierre Coutillo, I don't know.
Bless you.
Coutillo? revealed that the company entered talks with the Italian government on the AW609, perhaps to develop a para-public version of the aircraft. Then in December, the U.S. Army awarded Bell the contract to develop its V-280 tilt-rotor prototype into the future long-range assault aircraft. The V-280 has a maximum cruise speed approaching 300 knots. Wow. More than 100 knots faster than attack helicopters such as the current Boeing AH-64 Apache or the proposed future attack and reconnaissance aircraft for which Bell and Sikorsky remain in competition. The award led to further speculation about the future military utility of the AW609, this time as a possible escort aircraft for the V-280. Neither Bell nor Leonardo will publicly comment on the terms of the AW609 deal. However, a variety of governments, including the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia, have expressed interest in the aircraft, believed linked to surveillance, patrol, medevac, or search and rescue configurations. A Bell spokesman contacted by AIN referred comment to Leonardo, which declined to disclose the details of the contract. However, we can share that we see great interest in the AW609 from military users in roles including patrol, search and rescue, and special operations, said a Leonardo spokesperson. And then it goes on to talk about tilt rotors and history and the V-22 Osprey.
They do. I'll tell you what, actually, you say that. They do have the look. I'm just going to pop the picture back up, actually. They do have like an Osprey look to the configuration, don't they? You think if those two end rotors tilted, it would look very much like a streamline Osprey. With its sort of configuration stuff, it's got a real sort of it's got a real sort of like helicopter, sort of half helicopter, half sort of jet feel about it. Really, it's an interesting looking aircraft. I mean, I suspect it's very like nippy. Very easy to control and, sort of ideal for low flying and things like that, really, especially if you're doing search and rescue ops. It seems like an ideal design.
It does.
Well, all the things I expected you to say, Matt, that was not one of them. your knowledge...
Very astute.
From somewhere, it's incredible.
I know. I know. I don't know what you've done to me all. I've got to be honest with you. It was. I was quite happy with my ignorance, frankly, and then suddenly it's just like I've been intravenously fed information that I'm starting to retain. It's not good. It's really not good.
We're really sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your kind words, but But I mean, and I'm honest. To be brutally honest, I mean, my obsession with the Osprey is purely because of obviously Armando's background and stuff. It's a fascinating aircraft. So anything that's sort of like ticking the boxes or a variant thereof, I just find is absolutely fascinating. I say. The only thing that they could make it more special for me is if it was like it became a mini Osprey where it could be a helicopter / airplane. I just love it. But as you say, it sort of gives that vibe, doesn't it, where it could be doing low passes and all that kind of thing and do low level hovering and stuff like that, which if you're looking for people is just ideal. It just seems ideal.
And if you could have like a miniature version of Armando,
well,
also.
Yes. We all want one of those to keep.
Vehicle.
Yeah, we all want one of those to keep as our
like on the countertop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We should start doing 3D models of him. Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do. Absolutely.
The world's not ready for that much cool.
Yeah, true. Well, honestly, bless him. The one thing about Armando is he has no idea how cool he is, does he? That's the exhausting thing about it. It's just like it's just like he can make anything cool. It's just exhausting.
Do you all have bobblehead dolls and figures?
No, I know what you mean. I don't know, but I think we should do one.
Armando
we do.
Bobblehead.
I agree, absolutely. Leave it with me. I've got a friend with a 3D printer. I'm so going to make this happen. I'm absolutely going to make this happen. My modelling skills need some work, but the friend who has one is into his World of Warcraft, so he'd be probably quite good at painting it as well. So yeah, I'm searching the library. I have a project now that I know I'm going to try and nail over this weekend. So yeah, absolutely.
Outstanding.
Great idea. Nev, what are we doing next?
It's the competition next.
Ooh, exciting.
And this week's prize is the book All About Concorde, written by Mike Bannister, Chief Concorde Pilot. The interesting thing about this as well, it's also available as a audiobook, and I've been listening to the audiobook, and Mike does a superb job of describing so many things about the aircraft that I didn't even know, both technical and commercial as well. And of course, Mike spends a lot of time down at Brooklands with the prototype Concorde, and that's one that Jeff and I went on when he was
wow.
over.
Yes, I even have a certificate.
You do, yes.
That proves
so that's good. Now, we have some answers. We have some correct answers to the question. Now, this question I think is fascinating because of the low number. The question was, how much cargo payload was Concorde able to carry? And we've asked you to give it to us in metric tons.
Ooh.
If you wouldn't mind. The answer is only 2.5 metric tons.
Wow.
2.5 metric tons worth of payload in terms of baggage or whatever they wanted to carry. And of course, the Concorde's range was, a little bit limited. It was designed specifically for the Paris to New York and the London to New York routes, and using 95 tons of fuel to do it, with not a lot of reserve, I have to say.
No, indeed.
However, it is time for me to have a delve into my special bag here, where I have all the correct answers, and there were a number of them actually, quite a lot of them. So I shall choose one. Let's see who the lucky winner is. And it's Alan White, our good friend from the Republic of Ireland. Alan, well done. I shall send you this book tomorrow. I shall go down the post office. Although I might wait until Monday possibly, because the queue in the post office last Saturday was horrendous.
Was it? Oh wow!
It was getting very twitchy and cross.
I bet. Yes.
But I did say it was a good cause.
Good cause, obviously. Indeed.
Calmed it down a bit. So
indeed.
Are people from Ireland actually allowed to participate in this contest?
Very much so. Anyone in the world is more than welcome to enter. So absolutely.
We even sent one to Bill over in Canada the other week.
Oh,
good old Canadian.
There are no boundaries on.
No, absolutely not. If Royal Mail can send it, then it will leave these shores. Whether they get it or not is a different.
I was going to say, well,
good luck with that.
is a different story altogether. But now, Nev, you've got another competition for us. What are we giving away this time?
So our good chums at Grub Street Publishing have sent me another book last week. Actually, it's called From Spitfires to Vampires and Beyond. It's written by Owen Hardy and edited by Air Marshal G.A. Black Robertson. And a fine read it is as well. Actually, I've been having a bit of a thumb through it this week with some nice illustrations as well. So the question for this week, it's related to the Spitfires, you might expect. So the question is, the Vickers Supermarine Spitfire, how many different marks of the Spitfire were produced?
Ooh.
How many different marks of the Spitfire were produced?
That's an interesting one.
The number of aircraft produced apparently is between 20,300 and 20,400 aircraft, which is an incredible number, isn't it? So yeah, the question is, how many different...
Jeff's given his answer.
Good.
Trust me, that's the right answer. Send it in.
Okay, right.
All right.
Lovely. No, don't trust me. I have no idea.
So if you want to take part in the quiz, you have to send an email to podcast@planetalkinguk.com, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and I shall be putting the correct answers into the hat and drawing out a post-it note with somebody's name on next week.
So, Google is your friend on this one, by the way. Don't think you need to be able to pull it out of your head.
Don't mind people looking it up.
Not at all. Absolutely.
Oh, let me do it right now.
I was just amazed at the number of aircraft produced. Over 20,000. Absolutely amazing.
Wow. I feel that feels like a really big number, given, and yet there's so few that are certainly flying. There's there are some still flying, obviously, that, like Armando and stuff, I was only talking to one of the pilots this week, wasn't he, about these things. But as you say, it's I suppose the nature of the beast is, of course, a lot were lost during the activities to which they were involved in, for want of a better word. But while we're talking about email addresses and things, Nev, what are the social medias and things like that here?
Oh yes, mustn't forget those. If you look for Plane Talking UK on any of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, will be on there. The WhatsApp number, +44 757 224 9166. Our email address, as I just mentioned, is podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and the website is all the W's, planetalkinguk.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel also, and just search for Plane Talking UK. And if you use Amazon, you can use our website to give you a link to Amazon, and we get paid a small referral fee for your shopping. You can also become a patron, of course, give us some money by PayPal, and you can do that by going to www.planetalkinguk.com, and there is a link on there for that very purpose. And we're very grateful for all of our Patreons and PayPal members for helping us to keep the show on the road.
Very much so, very much so. So let's do a little bit of a round robin then. Nev, what have you got in your diary for this week?
Oh, flying, I'm pleased to say. Back in the air, not very far, going to Belgium on Monday, quite early, for a conference I'm doing. I'm actually speaking at it as well. So
hello.
I hope people don't mind that.
Do they know?
Well, I'll be there till Thursday.
Right, fair enough.
But just a short 50-minute flight.
Oh, that's very good. Okay, lovely. A little bit of flying in your diary then. Much else for the rest of the week, Nev?
No, I should be recovering from the experience, I would imagine.
Quite,
Absolutely.
What's the Belgian beer, I hope, Nev?
Well, that could happen, yes. Our European head office is just outside Antwerp as well, so always an opportunity for some nice, cloudy, strong beer. So,
indeed. Nick, what's on your itinerary? I mean, work, obviously, a bit like me, I suppose.
I'm off to sell a kidney to pay for the car repairs.
Lovely. Okay.
If anyone's interested, if they want to drop me an email, that'd be great.
Lovely.
Cash donations gratefully received.
Right, good. Okay, yeah. Contact in the usual ways, podcast@planetalkinguk.com. So that's all sorted. Lovely. As the Mercedes has got to have a little bit of work done to it then, by the sound of it.
So.
Yes, indeed. And Jeff, obviously you've just come back from a little bit of a short hop from the North Carolina area. Much in the diary for this week?
So I am doing a new way of flying trips and picking up trips, and I bid a regular month, and then I drop all of my trips, and then I pick up things as I go throughout the month, and I'm loving it. I wish I'd started doing this years ago, and you can only do that if you're a very senior person, which I am, because look at all the gray hair.
You've earned it, I think is the word we're looking for there, Jeff. You've earned the right.
I don't know, really, honestly, between now and the first part of July, when I'm on an airplane heading to across the pond and join you all in your wonderful country, what I'm doing. But I'll be doing something, just short little hops here and there, and just to, get some hours in.
I mean, I'm amazed that you like this way of doing it, because one of the things I hate is short notice changes. I mean, is it the excitement of not knowing where you're going tomorrow that is working for you?
No, this is the key to why I love this. So in the past, like if you're on reserve or on standby or whatever, when they call you up and assign a trip, you are going to fly that trip, no matter where you're going, and no matter how many legs you're going to fly, and no matter how bad the weather is. Now, because I'm the number one captain on this airplane in Atlanta, so I just look, I see what trips are available, and if they try to assign one to me, I look at the weather and I go,
nah, you're right.
Not doing that. So, and if it's more than just like one leg out and one leg back, then I go, no, it's too much.
I'm all right.
And so I just don't do it. Now, the downside is that, I might end up with a month of maybe half the number of trips that I probably should fly, and that is directly related to my pay, because we're not salaried pilots here. We are hourly pilot, wage earners. So if I don't fly anything, I'm not going to get paid anything. So it's a dual-edged sword. But I'm senior enough that I can pick up stuff and still have a regular paycheck, pretty much. So.
Amazing stuff. Now, I'm going to ask the question, and I'm sure loads of people are asking you this question, obviously, because we're all sort of excited for you, I think is the best way to describe it. Do you have a date yet for when it's coming to an end?
I haven't had a date in many, many years.
I meant to do with flying.
Oh,
you're just avoiding the conversation.
Okay, so
well played.
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I mean, I can tell you the last possible day that I could possibly fly this year would be Christmas Day, because my birthday is on the 26th of December, and that's when I turn 65. And once you turn 65 here in the U.S., Part 121 flying, that's it. And now, there is something, and maybe you'll talk about that in your news, maybe on the next show. I know we're going to talk about it on our recording tomorrow. The House, there was a House committee that just barely passed a recommendation to increase the age to age 67. And of course, it still has to be passed by the entire House, and then it goes to the Senate. And so, and the chances of it actually passing, I think, are not great. But even if it does, the question everybody's asking, okay, Jeff, are you going to stay until you turn 67 in another couple of years? And my answer is a hearty no. I'm not.
Hell no.
Hell no. I'm moving on to my next life,
indeed.
which is not flying airplanes. So doing a book on, well, you know what? Mark Priestley in your audience asks if I've considered doing a book on my flying career. That would be epic. Well, I'm not sure it would be epic, but
sorry, Jeff, you're underselling yourself. I mean, we're so lucky to be able to have you, sort of on the show every now and again, because there are stories I know in that head of yours that would just be out of this world.
All these stories that I could tell, they're all fascinating to me. But I don't know if anybody else would find them.
Underestimate how fascinating your career is to the rest of us. Purely because we are very nosy people. That's the reality of it. But
my career is nothing. My history and experiences are nothing compared to Captain Nick's, things that he did, especially when he was in the military.
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. We'll deal with that as a separate issue. Absolutely.
But to answer your question, basically anywhere from now until the end of the year, I've extended my vacation back into November, around the Thanksgiving time frame here in the U.S. Thanksgiving, November 19th-ish. But I don't know. Somewhere in there will probably be my last trip, my last flight. And honestly, I don't want a big thing made of it. I don't want people to try to book a flight because they think it's going to be my last flight, because I don't really know. I might just decide in September that that's enough.
Enough is
I don't
enough.
want to do this anymore.
Absolutely.
I'm out of here.
Yeah. No,
so,
I completely get that.
I do plan on doing some kind of a big party after it's all over, and maybe sometime in 2024 have a big party to honor or celebrate my retirement.
Absolutely celebrate, because Jeff, I mean, I'm really excited for you, because you've worked damn hard, and the same as Nev, both of you have worked damn hard your entire lives. It's about time that while you're both fit and healthy, that you enjoy your hard work. Frankly,
damn right.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that. That's all I'm saying. So
I haven't actually worked that hard. I've just got away with it for so many years.
Well, we don't want to go into all the details.
No, quite.
We're just going to stick with what Matt just said.
Yeah. Go with my version. It's much more politically correct and PC and all that. Okay. Nev, I think it's time to sort of wrap up, really.
But there's just I think got just one further question from Bill.
Oh, go on.
From Canada. Jeff, when do you get the new motorhome?
Oh, yes.
That's another great question, to which I wish that I had the answer. I ordered this thing in April of 2021, more than 2 years ago. I was supposed to get it 12 to 15 months after that, which would have been summer of last year. And then they kind of extended it all the way to like April. Well, of course, April is come and gone.
Yeah.
We're now in June. And the best guess would be sometime October, November, hopefully before I retire. And that's probably the only thing that's really keeping me going in my flying career is the fact that I don't have the motorhome yet.
No,
to
and
kind of
soon
make
you've
that
got
transition.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe somebody out there is like purposely delaying it.
Yeah.
You
know what it is? They are big fans of APG.
That's gotta be.
Whoever's in charge of it.
But I'm going to keep doing it. That's what I'm going to be doing in that darn motorhome. I'm going to be traveling the North American continent, doing the show. It's going to be my mobile recording studio.
Love
and
it.
We're going to have meetups everywhere. It's just going to be great to see the community out there.
Can't wait. Genuinely, I'm so excited for you, Jeff. I can't even put into words how excited I am for you.
Thanks.
It's just
I appreciate that.
As I say, like you and Nev, I'm sort of so excited for both of you. Like that many people feel sad like when they're reaching the end of it, but you've both got so much that you want to do. If you like, when you're finally released from these shackles, for want of a better word.
Yep.
And it's just going to be amazing. I think the podcasting world are going to be living the dream once it happens, I think.
Well, I can't wait to share it.
Absolutely. Indeed. Nev, we should probably wrap up now.
Yeah, that's about it for tonight. Thank you, Jeff, so much for coming on, as always.
Anytime.
Pleasure to hear your stories and to chat with you. Thanks very much indeed. Nik, thanks for joining us last week as well at RAF Cosford. I really enjoyed our time there. And
Likewise,
Matt,
it was
thanks
a
for
real pleasure.
pressing all the buttons as well, as usual.
Always a pleasure.
This week. Brilliant. So that's about it for this week. So we'll be back same time next week at 7 o'clock UK time. Hopefully you can join us then. Meanwhile, hope you have a great weekend. Bye for now.